Hi everyone, Sue here. In this video, I go through how we pressure can our potatoes and root vegetables, as well as some soup stock. If you could help us out and hit the thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, that would be appreciated. Thanks, enjoy the video, and have a great day. All right, some soup stock here on the stove. This is all items from the garden. Tiny little baby celery that didn't do too good in the garden this year, but it'll add some great flavor to the soup. Everything in here is from the garden. Lots of people are curious about how we pressure can our root vegetables, such as potatoes, carrots, beets, and we also do parsnip, turnip, and we just basically pressure can it in jars, cold packed with hot boiling water on top. The potatoes, we add 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt, and that's it. Then you just pressure can it for the desired amount of time required for your elevation and for the size of jar and the ingredient in the jar. Today I'm going to be packing our freshly dug potatoes. We cut them into cube sizes. That's just what we like. I have 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt in the bottom of the jars. That's just for seasoning. We cold pack them. We add hot boiling water to fill the jars to within 1 inch of the top. They will then be processed in the pressure canner for 40 minutes at 11 psi. This is just the size we like the potatoes. You can cut them whatever size you like. I believe the book says 1 inch. Nothing bigger than 1 inch. So some of these smaller potatoes, we could just leave these whole, but we like them this way. Now, when these potatoes are taken out of the jar to cook with, sometimes we put them around a roast, and we will just drain the water out of the jar and then add them directly around the roast, around in the roasting pan, and just like you would a fresh potato. Or we love our home fries in the morning. We will drain a jar and then add the potatoes, which are a nice size like this, into a frying pan and cook them with a little olive oil, salt, pepper, garlic. That will be our home fried potato in the morning for breakfast. You can also boil them, take them out of the jar, boil them, and then mash them. So you can basically do anything you would normally do with the potato fresh when it's pressure canned to make them shelf stable. See what I got so far. Well, these are all potatoes I just dug out of the garden last week. You can mix them together too. I'm just adding them to the jars as I cut them. Now, any bad spots, just set that aside. Don't want that in there. These potatoes I washed and rinsed and then rinsed again. You won't believe how much dirt sticks to them. And no, my cuts aren't perfect and my sizing isn't perfect, but they turn out just great. Any of the potatoes that were damaged by the shovel digging them up, we just keep them aside and use them up fresh. It's a lengthy process, but so worth it in the end. We don't have a root cellar here. Hopefully get one in the future. And then we can store more potatoes fresh as well. I'm going to just give the jar a shake just to settle them all in there. Once you add the hot water into the jar, you can use a wooden spoon to poke down and get any air bubbles out of the jar. Okay, this is just hot water, and I'll just be filling the jars to within an inch of the top. Then I will use the end of our wooden spoon just to get any of the air bubbles out. I can add a few more potatoes if they settle, but they should be packed pretty tight. You want them about an inch from the top. This was some less desirable items from the garden that I didn't want to go to waste. Some overripe tomatoes, an onion, garlic, some tiny little celery that didn't grow too far. This is the celery. Just threw the whole things in there. They're pretty tiny. They didn't get very far. And just a few herbs from the garden as well. I have thyme, basil, and garlic, parsley. So yeah, so I'm going to probably I will drain the liquid off, and then I will just pressure can the liquid only. These veggies might keep some aside just for a fresh bowl of soup right now for lunch. I'm just straining the soup stock here. The 500 milliliter jars. This is already spiced and ready to go. And I fill it to within 1 inch of the top as well. here's some helpful advice when filling jars. See the lines on top of the jars? They estimate headspace. So when you're at the neck of the jar, about where my water level is here, that's about 1 inch. If you're up at the next line, that would be about a 1/2 inch. And the next one up would be a 1/4 inch. So I will have to take a few of these potatoes out because they're above the 1 inch line. And when I'm pressure canning the potatoes, I want them to be about 1 inch. All right, this is my soup stock all ready to go. Okay, now that I have these all topped up to within our desired height, I will take a cloth or a paper towel and just clean off the tops and the very rim. Another thing, prior to this, you should check your mason jars to make sure there's no cracks or chips in the top of the jar. And Joe just went out to town. Town's about an hour, 15 minutes away. And he hit up a couple grocery stores while he was there. And I guess potatoes and beets were on sale. Fresh, locally grown. And it sounds like he's bringing me back a bunch more to pressure can. So what we didn't get from our garden, we will be pressure canning from items that we purchased at the grocery store. And he specified that it was locally grown. So it's nice to support some local farmers. All right, now I'll put the rings on these. They've been kept hot in a little bit of water here. Not boiling, just kind of simmering hot. And same thing, you put them on finger tight, not overly tight. And we don't add any kind of anything into this. It's just salt, water, and the potatoes. Okay, we are almost at 11. We're at about almost 10, I guess. The recipe, I'm looking at 2 different recipes. One calls for 10 psi for 40 minutes and the other one calls for 11 for 40 minutes. So we're just going with 11 for 40 minutes just to be on the safe side. Don't want to ruin any of our potatoes. It would be devastating to me if I opened a jar and they were no good. So just to be on the safe side, we will keep this at 11 or just slightly above, but we won't let it go below that 11 mark. And I keep adjusting the flame just down a little bit here, just to try to keep it at the 11 psi mark. Now I'll set a timer now and go from there. Okay, after 40 minutes, we let the pressure canner drop down to 0 psi. Then we carefully remove the lid, remove the jars, and let them cool. We will remove the rings and store them in our pantry.